right, hooray for everything. It is time for the XP Billionaires podcast. This is Rafe Thegram. Sky and Irene are clearly here with me. Irene, how are you doing today?
Oh, not bad, not bad. Do I need a helmet for your level of exuberance, or am I, safe?
I mean, you're also several hours away, so I would like to think you're safe.
You never know. You might be very exuberant.
If I were ever that exuberant, I'm probably on my deathbed. Sky, how are you doing today?
I'm perplexed, but good.
Excellent. That's what I was going for. Well, this is going to be a little bit of a different kind of episode in that we're not really spacing it out that much. So we've got another top three episode planned for you guys this week. Now, normally we don't do them this close to each other. We had one just 2 weeks ago. If you haven't listened to it, please go check it out. It was all about weapon designs. I think it's a lot of fun, and y'all should be listening to it. Besides that, we were discussing new topics to go on, and everybody jumped at this one and wanted to do it almost right away. So just for you guys, just for us as the XP Billionaires, we're treating ourselves by doing another top three right out the gate. As for the topic for this week, we are going to be discussing musical scores. So video games are never truly complete without that musical score. Much like in TV and movies, the right music can help express the overall atmosphere of any scene. With the amount of storytelling in video games nowadays, a good score will make or break the success of said game as well. So this week, we're going to give you our list of the top 3 RPG musical scores. Now, before we begin, let us state for the record, none of us have any degrees or formal training in music theory. I know Sky has a little bit of a musical background through their parents, and I'm not sure how much you would have, Irene, to be perfectly honest, but I know none of us actually went to school studying music.
I play the violin badly.
All right, fair enough. So that being said, while we may not get overly technical into what we're discussing, we still believe that these are some very good tracks, soundtracks, so do check them out, and do check out the games, of course, as well. All right, well, without further ado, let's get on with it. I have drawn the short straw this week, so we're going to start with my number 3. And my number 3 comes from Xenoblade Chronicles X. So for a game that is about you as a player colonizing, I should say, an unknown planet after the Earth is destroyed, this game has some pretty uplifting rock music included. The music transitions incredibly well when you hit new areas or switch into combat, and each music piece seems incredibly fitting for its scenario. One of the reasons this one even hit my top 3 list was specifically for the theme song that plays when you're in New Los Angeles, which is basically the home city, colony ship, and basically place you all end up living while we're working on colonizing. Listening to that song while prepping for every next expedition or side quest you're doing just really gets you pumped to go out on the field and face the unknown. I don't know. It was just something about it that was really a lot of fun, and it would just play on repeat, which was one thing, but it was so good. I honestly don't have much more to say about that, but it's definitely was a great selection of music. So next up, we have Sky. What is your number 3 for musical scores?
Okay, so I am going to talk not just about one game, but basically one composer in this case. And it's Shoji Meguro, who did a lot of the music for some of the later Shin Megami Tensei and Persona games. And still works for them. So he's been the main composer for Persona since Persona 3. The man's a fucking genius. He's in House at Atlas. They're extremely lucky to have him. He is so versatile. He can compose in multiple styles, though he leans hardest into rock music. Delivers incredible overall soundtracks, where every song is pretty good, right? At least, if not absolutely stellar. He added some fantastic tracks to the ports of the older Persona games as well when they did those on the PSP, and he did those dark, atmospheric pieces for Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, and that game just has an incredible soundtrack. But my favorite tracks of his, though, come from Persona 5, but that might just be because I prefer the sort of jazzy, pop rock fusion thing he's done in that game. However, the man made me like a song with rap in it in Persona 3, and that says a lot.
That actually really does.
Yes. So I find that he has a gift for sort of hitting on a musical style that really suits the game and its characters. And yeah, I've liked everything I've heard, so that's why he takes my number 3 spot.
You're absolutely right. He is a fantastic composer, and yeah, no, we're lucky to have him for a series like Shin Megami Tensei, or even if he was just to stay on for even one, I would be just as happy as long as he doesn't leave Atlas and stays working on it. And I would love to see him do some other work as well too. All right, that moves on to Irene, your number 3 soundtrack.
I was gonna have to give it to the Kingdom Hearts series. I'm sure you've all heard me talk enough about Kingdom Hearts and its absolute bonkers storyline, but fortunately the music's a little bit easier to decipher. Leaning on some, pretty heavily iconic tracks from Disney, which helps a lot in some of its world music. It really helps put on the style properly, like you'll have a musical theme for each world that really suits because each Disney movie it's based on has definitely come together and established a musical tone for that setting. So you never get like a jarring experience where the music just really doesn't suit the area you're in. But what I really wanted to focus in on is while the world tracks are nice and they're well put together and well thought out, it's the theme that always gets me. So the opening theme that has since been extrapolated into the overall Kingdom Hearts theme, written by Utada Hikaru, the opening theme, Simple and Clean, right?
Mm.
And since then, the orchestra version is just, it gives me chills every time I hear it. It's a beautiful song, and it's uplifting, and it has a certain melancholia to it that I absolutely adore at the same time. And the games make liberal use of this theme in order to really drive home certain important scenes and certain important aspects. And it suits so perfectly the actual game itself that I think they really hit the nail on the head with that opening. And while I really liked the opening for Kingdom Hearts 2 as well, I think that you're not going to necessarily top the opening theme for Kingdom Hearts in that it went on to become like proper iconic,
I mean, even I still remember that one. They were using that for the original advertisements and commercials that I would see on television back when you would get those kinds of quick trailers.
You're still using it today. The Kingdom Hearts 3 adverts were done with the orchestral theme of Simple and Clean. There are a few games that so clearly tie themselves to that, to the game. Those few notes, it's instantaneously recognized as Kingdom Hearts.
No, you're absolutely right. And like I don't follow the series as well as you do, but that's still something that I know as a fact. So it's passed on to players and non-players of the series alike, I find. So
Yeah. I've been trying to think a little bit of like, okay, are there any other game series where I'm like, okay, is it instantly recognizable from a single song? And it's like, no, not really. No. I mean, Final Fantasy has its big hits, as I'll talk about later. Spoilers. But it's not necessarily like this song is Final Fantasy. Aside from perhaps, the original opening for Final Fantasy.
yeah. Yeah.
But even so, it's not used in every Final Fantasy game.
Yeah. All right. Well, those were our number threes. Pretty straightforward there. So great choices all around. Let's move on to our number twos. For my number twos, my game choice is actually one that's just recently been talked about in the last couple of weeks, thanks to the most recent Nintendo Direct game that's getting a Switch remaster, and that will be Tokyo Mirage Sessions FE. This game is about Japanese idol culture turned Shin Megami Tensei. So naturally, the music is going to need to be a huge part of it. If you're a fan of J-pop music, then you'll probably love this game. because each fight that you get into has excellent music going around it because it makes you feel as though you're on stage doing that fight. It actually the fighting area, it basically turns into an area where it looks like you're on stage and there's a crowd of audience watching you as you do it.
I haven't played it, but I watched you play it. It's more like almost like a Coliseum setting, right? Like where the
Yeah,
audience is all the way around you.
yes, exactly. That's the better way to put it. Yeah. The crowd goes wild and gets crazier the more you perform. So it feels like you're in a concert, and every time you do a skill, it's performance related. So eventually you get to the point where you can team, if you combo enough, you can team up with a character in your party and do like a duet scene, which becomes like a massive damage finishing move. It's upbeat, it's pleasant, and it really sells the setting, even though it's still a Shin Megami Tensei game, and you know it's going to be as dark as shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole idea was that it was fusing Shin Megami Tensei with Fire Emblem, but somehow made it about idol culture. Like the game is really strange conceptually, but I'm looking forward to playing the Switch version because I didn't get to it the first time around. So
Same.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I got through most of it. I actually did not complete the final dungeon. I do need to go back and do that at some point, but I would probably just do that on the Wii one. All right, well, Sky, we got a number two waiting on you, so let's hear it.
And of course, am I going to turn down an opportunity to talk about Suikoden? No, I am not.
You know, you can't say that every week, right?
I'm pretty sure they can. Don't shit all over Sky's new catchphrase.
You just earned brownie points.
Yay.
So, it's not something you hear talked about a lot with Suikoden, but the series has some totally brilliant music, particularly in its first two entries. Miki Higashino handled the vast majority of music for Suikoden and Suikoden 2, and the songs are just memorable and magical with a very traditional Celtic slash classical vibe for the most part. She's another one of those composers who was really able to hit on songs that felt appropriate for the setting and what you were doing. But her work isn't just in those two games, as a lot of music they also continue to use in the later games, usually with remixed versions. And it sort of helps tie the series together generally, which I really like. Similar to what Irene was talking about with Kingdom Hearts. I'm going to give a special shout out to the tragedy theme, La Mia Tristeza. It just makes every death all the sadder, and it's just a beautiful piece of music. While this piece is instrumental and very slow in the game, there's some lovely vocal versions that where they've picked up the beat a little bit, and they were released on accompanying soundtrack CDs. I believe it's on the Vocal Collection CD that has my favorite version of it. It's gorgeous. So yeah, that's my number two.
You're right. Suikoden did have a wonderful set of music, and it was, I don't know, like it did really spark a lot of emotions. I mean, you give credit to Lamia Tristeza. I tend to give a lot more credit to the Night Before song. I don't know what it's called, but you know the one I'm talking about.
Oh yes, the one they play the night before any really big battle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
That
very
one,
Probably just called the night before.
it's very sweet and it's very somber and I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it's a lovely piece as well. Other pieces that she wrote, like the theme for the Winger District in Suikoden 2, it was reused a couple of times and given vocal versions as well. She composed some very sort of flexible pieces in terms of, how they could be arranged.
yeah, absolutely. It was incredibly well done. And did you know offhand, did she do the songs for Suiko Gaiden?
Yeah, she was one of the people involved in Suiko Gaiden's music as well.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that just makes it even better because I loved both of those intros.
Yeah, some of that's some really fine music. And unfortunately, after when she stopped working on the series, the music generally just wasn't as good. And when it was stuff that she had composed for the first two games for the most part. So
She did a fantastic job for while she was there, so we'll give her credit for that.
she really did. And, like most soundtracks involve, multiple composers, but she really did the bulk of the work for the early Suikoden games. And so I think she deserves an enormous amount of credit.
I completely agree. All right, Irene, number 2. Have at it.
Final Fantasy VII. And yeah, I know what you're gonna say. I give this game a shout out all the time because it's one of my all-time favorites. But hear me out. It had to go on my list because very few game soundtracks get a physical response from me every time I hear it. And one that sticks with me years and years and years later from God, I can remember so many pieces of music from that game and I haven't played it in over a decade. Like the opening theme never fails to give me chills and I can still hum the battle themes to this day from memory. And this is all before we get into the beautiful like area pieces like the one from Cosmo Canyon. Like they really worked hard on making sure the music suited the action on the screen, what was happening, and the story itself. But what really cemented it as my number 3 pick is Aerith's theme in particular. Because to this day, this song can still make me tear up just listening to it. And perhaps it's because I've infused this one with meaning because of my own history with the game. But again, I haven't played this game in like 10 years and I still remember every note. And so clearly they did something right when they were composing it. And there's something about that song that is just so inherently it's sad. It's a sad song and yet is so heartbreakingly beautiful at the same time. And I really like it.
Final Fantasy, I mean, Uematsu should get all the credit for his work because he, largely speaking, has been responsible for the Final Fantasy soundtracks.
Oh,
And
fully support that statement.
I mean,
Uematsu's a
the
genius.
man's a genius. Like
Yeah,
he's one of the best in the business.
he really is. He's composed so many like I struggled a little bit between picking a Final Fantasy rather than throwing Final Fantasy just like up on the board as like all-time favorites because like I have a Distant Worlds playlist that I just listen to over and over again and that's just music from Final Fantasy down to like little silly themes like the fucking Chocobo theme which are just like dumb and stupid and amazing to like these
It's so
heartbreak.
cute.
It really is, and it's especially hilarious. I don't know Uematsu. I don't know if you did the remix that they have for the Fat Chocobo Mount in Final Fantasy 14, but like, oh my god, like fucking genius playing that on a tuba. It's amazing. It's so good. And like they have songs that are like just that silly, that are just adorable and cute and uplifting and really fun, but they also have the opposite end of the spectrum where you have things like Aerith's theme playing over the boss fight after she dies and like ugh, it's a really like heart-wrenching scene and Uematsu not only has managed to compose perfect music to go with it, but if he had anything to do with where and when it was used, he's also got to take a lot of the credit as to making it drive home like the impact that it was meant for.
Sure.
I don't know though.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was responsible for the sound design.
No, fair enough. I mean, regardless, he's done a whole lot of work for the series. So, I mean, whether he did or not, I'm sure he influenced it in some way or another. So,
They
it
would be foolish not to take his input at this point. It's proper iconic. Again.
no, absolutely. All right, we got number 3, we got number 2. We're hammering these out, which is surprising for us, but no, this is great. But we've got our number 1s now. So, we'll start with me and well, sticking to Uematsu, I've also chosen Final Fantasy game, but I've gone a little slightly older school and I've picked Final Fantasy VI.
Yes.
While the entire Final Fantasy series has excellent music, as we've already discussed, this one in particular really spoke to me more than any of the others. Like right from the moment where you see the scene of three Magitech armors walking towards the town of Narsh begin, I knew this was going to have an amazing set of music.
Yeah,
Even
that's
now,
Terra's theme, right? That
yeah,
plays over that one.
yeah, that's correct. So even now, having not played the game in 8-ish years, probably longer, I can't remember. Like like you, Irene, I can remember most of the songs from memory. You know, the catchy fight scene music, the ominously awesome organs playing during a boss fight. But I mean, most importantly, we also can't forget about the opera sequence in the game. Like,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. Even though this was originally a Super Nintendo game, that scene moved me in a way that very few games can, and the music in that was significantly part of that. I mean, that seems redundant because it is an opera and it's going to have music, but
But
yeah,
it was these weren't actual musical tracks. Like
No, they were midis.
they were midis, right?
And it's the same with
basically,
Final Fantasy VII. Like, despite having a slightly more varied, like, tonal range, they were still largely MIDI files with, you know, you had some instrument distinction, but nothing close to the grand orchestra that you can achieve today.
that's
Yeah.
true. And yeah, and lastly, like the tonal shift in the music when the game transitions from the world of balance to the world of ruin was spot fucking on. Like that shift started with no music at all while Celis was dealing with Sid through on this one secluded island, and that music just starts gradually coming back as Celeste starts her new journey, and that was just a touch of brilliance. And these things alone are more than enough to give it my top spot.
Yeah, it's an excellent soundtrack and all the more so for overcoming that it was, it was MIDI files. They weren't able to do, big orchestras or, that sort of thing. The actual composition transcended how it was played. So,
Same. That's another reason why I gave it to Final Fantasy VII as well. Because, like, yeah, while it was slightly more technologically advanced than the Final Fantasy VI, you still didn't have the full range of orchestra that you could possibly have achieved. They managed anyway to drive home very emotional tracks with what they had. Also, fun fact, I once got into a huge argument over which theme was the boss theme and which theme was the regular battle theme in Final Fantasy VII. And to the person who got into that fight with me, I'm still right, motherfucker.
All right, note to self: don't argue with Irene on Final Fantasy music.
You
It's
will
just not
lose. You will lose that fight.
fair enough. All right, Sky, what is your number one for musical scores? I got a feeling. Let's hear it.
okay. So, there was no picking one game for this. I'm going to go for the Exapico series, which is the Artanelico and Surge Concerto games. The music is brilliant. The common link musically for these games is the rather eccentric composer, Akiko Shikata, who was involved in most of the tracks, or at least, many, many of the tracks, and set the tone for the music generally. What makes her work so unusual is that she does exceedingly complex vocal chorus arrangements, as many as 200 tracks in some cases. The end result, then, is distinct from anything else I've ever heard. Also, she can definitely do epic songs. Listen to Method Replacchia on YouTube. You'll thank me. It's amazing.
Yeah, I love that one. That's one of my favorites too.
So good. It is possibly the most, I would say it's the most epic video game song I've ever heard. In addition to her distinct style infusing much of the music, multiple languages and dialects thereof have been developed for songs in the series. Now, songs are basically spells within the game. This is an addition to Japanese and other languages being used. For example, in Arno's Surge, there were songs in Russian, or at least partially in Russian. Now, these new languages serve as a sort of programming language because the spells basically interface with ancient machinery to do their thing. It's very, very complicated and esoteric, but that's generally the feel. And if you look at certain arrangements of the languages, particularly the one used in Arno's Surge, it looks like a programming language.
Without knowing too much about music, I've heard it likened to mathematics in a way that coding is similar, so I can totally see how that would work.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's really interesting how they've tied music to programming to magic in this series, and it's very effective. You'll often see to the when you see it written in, say, sometimes they'll scroll some of the text during opening sequences and stuff, and it definitely looks like a programming language. It's totally fascinating stuff, and it's got its own sentence structure. People have composed fan music. In Hymnos is sort of the big language within the game, though there are others. So, for being completely unique and just totally epic in scope, the Exapico series gets my number one spot.
Yeah, that was definitely a win there. Yeah, I knew you were going to pick it. I didn't want to because I knew you'd be able to explain it way better. So, and you did. So, excellent.
I tried. It's a very complicated thing, and I don't understand, admittedly, all aspects of it. I've only played through most of the games once. I've done the first one, Archinelico, twice. And one of the Surge Concerto games we didn't get here in North America. So there's also some story plot things I'm not 100% clear on.
Yeah, no, exactly. But all right, well, last but not least, Irene, you've got a number one for us, I take it.
I do, and this one was not even a contest. As much as I love Final Fantasy and as much as I love Kingdom Hearts, the number one spot for me had to go to Nier Automata. And this is because I'd never actually stopped and stood in an area to listen to the music before playing Nier Automata. The soundtrack is this perfect blend of heartbreakingly beautiful with an undercurrent of mysticism to perfectly complement the overall tone of the narrative. Nier Automata tells a very introspective story about emotions, attachment, nature of the self, and everything that kind of goes in with those lofty thoughts. And the music just completes it in a way that so few games manage. And the piece I'm actually going to bring up is a very specific one, and I think it really illustrates the game's successes with sound design and score in general. And it's the amusement park. And I remember first walking into the amusement park and hearing the music kick up. I stood there awestruck at the scene before me that was perfectly choreographed with the music, and not just in like a cutscene, but in general. The action happening around you goes with the music playing in the background. And I want to focus in on it specifically because one, it's my favorite piece, and two, it illustrates the game's use of music perfectly. Because as you move through the amusement park, the music actually shifts and changes, but is incredibly fluid. It's seamless and just goes from one style to another. So in small, confined back alley spaces, without losing a beat, the music will shift to a softer and more restrained version of the fanfare music that's playing on the main avenues in the park. And it transitions through these different levels as you move through the area very organically. And this happens with literally every area in the game. You basically have 3 different versions of the same song all interwoven together so that as you transition into this little corner inside this area, the music shifts to this quiet, more reserved form of the song that doesn't necessarily might have the heavy vocals. But as you move to the more open and more energetic areas, the vocals kick in, the drums, you get these new instruments added. And it's essentially 2 or 3 versions of the same song playing kind of in unison, just building on top of each other. And it's quite clear that the team made the score a top priority to really help set the stage for their melancholic world, and it paid off in literally the best soundtrack I've ever heard. So for those of you who haven't heard the amusement park theme, go find it on YouTube. It's really great.
Yeah, you had us listen to it, and it's a superb piece of music. It really is.
Yeah, the amusement park theme is just it's perfect. And that's just one of the many pieces in that soundtrack that are really excellent. Like there's the desert apartment complex theme, which also like springs to mind immediately. And it's got that same sort of like longing sense. The gentle and somewhat upbeat tone of the robot village. Like there's a lot of really excellent pieces in it. And I think they did an excellent job in making sure that sound was not an afterthought. Music was not an afterthought. It had to go otherwise, but and it wasn't gonna work otherwise, you know?
No, I completely understand what you're getting at. Yeah, no, that's makes total sense. All right. Well, now we've all talked about this very, very fun theme of soundtracks, which I'm glad we all got to do it. I mean, you guys were all so excited about it when we first talked about it, so I'm nice to have gotten through it. And I mean, I had a lot of fun too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not just saying that for your benefit. Yeah. So if there's a musical soundtrack you guys were really into for an RPG or really any video game, I mean, hit us up. Like we're more than happy to talk non-RPGs with you online. We just tend to focus on them here on the podcast. But yeah, you can hit me up on Twitter at BillionairesXP. You can visit me on Instagram at Ray Thigram. Or under the same name, you can visit me on my Twitch streams, which are Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Irene, where can everyone find you?
You can find me at irogue_XP on Twitter and Twitch, and I usually stream on Thursdays at 7.
All right. And Sky, where are you going to be?
I'm at Skyknight on Twitter and Twitch. I'm at skyknight.xp on Instagram. And I stream on Tuesday nights at 7 Eastern.
Awesome. And don't forget to tell all your friends who need a transcript that we will have a transcript of the episode coming up within a few days of release, and that'll be courtesy of our XP Hobo, and that will be at our website, xpbillionaires.wordpress.com. Last but not least, don't forget to check out our Coffee page for all the big updates in terms of streams, new content, and anything special that the XP Billionaires will be doing. That'll be at coffee.com/XPBillionaires. And if you do like what you're doing, send us a donation. And if you don't want to do that, but still like what we're doing, please share everything that we have up there with everyone you know so that they can share in our awesomeness. All right, well, that's going to be it for this week, but don't make me sing it to you. Just keep gaming, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye!